Okay.
Hello.
I'm trying to get in. Got it.
Hi.
Hi. Sorry, it took me a little bit.
No, that's all right. I just actually hopped off a different podcast that I do with my son and my nephew because I'm going out of town, and then they were like, "Hey, we have to do this today," so I'm scrambling.
Well, belated happy birthday.
Well, it's actually Friday. Thank you.
Okay, well then early happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. My daughter, so a couple weeks ago, I announced I was going to Costa Rica for my birthday, and a bunch of people said happy birthday, and my daughter was laughing at me. And then on Saturday, we posted that, and everybody was saying happy birthday. And she's like, "Dad, you did it again. Everybody thinks it's your birthday." But I said, I can handle having 3 50th birthdays. I'm okay with
I was
that.
gonna say, I try to milk it out for the whole month.
Yeah, I should have done that. Can I overlap that into July, you think?
Sure.
Okay. All right. With Catherine St. Clair. She's the founder and executive director of the NPE Friends Fellowship and runs the NPE NPE Friends Facebook group, right? You get that
That's
all
right.
up? Yeah. So I'm glad you're here.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a chance to talk, hasn't it?
It has. Life kind of got in the way this past year.
I'm so tired of saying what a weird year, but what a weird year.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't feel normal. You?
No. Oh no.
Yeah.
No, I've lost people this past year to a senseless virus, and yeah, it's been a rough year. It's been a rough year.
It really has. And I think we all wanted a feeling like we crossed the finish line or the curtain went up or whatever. And we're just, it's just not happening. You know, I know that people were celebrating states were open or whatever the case, and it still isn't. And I think we're going to transition into a new life or whatever it is. I just don't think
New normal.
Yeah. As much as I hate saying that too, but I just don't see a defining stop and start, you know, with what's happening. I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're just going to have to adapt, and we're going to see some changes that's going to last for years or forever, like blowing out candles on a cake. I think that's gone.
Yeah, I had my wife hold my single candle yesterday at my birthday party, and then I blew out the single candle so I didn't, you know, blow COVID all over their cake. And yeah, anyway, I'm glad you're here. We've got people, I'm trying to find them. If people, I think people are following us on Facebook, and if you are, feel free to ask Catherine and I a question if you'd like to. We're open to checking that, and I think I can manage to do both, have a conversation and check the chat. I'm glad you're here. It's been a year since we talked, and you know, so much has changed and a lot going on. And I know you've got a lot going on, so I appreciate you taking time out to do this for me. I wanted to do this with you for NPE Awareness Month, and I know you feel strongly about that as well.
I do. I am still in awe of how much our group continues to grow, even though this past year media coverage of the whole NPE dynamic has come to a screeching halt. The only information that's out there in the internet now are old articles, old interviews, that sort of thing. And still our group continues to consistently grow, which tells me that there are still a lot of souls out there who are feeling lost, bumping around in the dark, that we need to be able to reach so that they can find the same healing and comfort that we have found in our collective family of NPEs. So we're going to focus on that for the next year, on trying to bring about awareness, especially in this month, which is NPE Awareness Month. We've got our documentary is still in the works. We're so excited about it. We saw a little teaser of it. You
Good.
guys can go to my page or go to the Facebook page and see that. But the documentary should be, I honestly wish I had a date for you. I don't yet. The guy that's been working on it has been putting in a lot of his own free time into it. So hopefully we'll be in the next few months, we will be able to release that. And we still have some events that are starting to build up and starting to get scheduled around the United States and hopefully even in Europe. Meet and greets are starting to open again. And I'm so happy about that because there's been so much comfort and healing that comes from being able to physically get together and connect with people. And it's kind of a calming effect, I think, for the members when they can do that, because they get to see other people who are regular, healthy, normal, reasonable people out there. And just being around them validates our own stories, because we realize that, okay, so I'm not as bizarre as I thought I was. There's all these people that are really cool people who are going through the same thing I am. And it's amazing how much healing comes just from having that connection. So I am happy that we are starting to see more and more meet and greets starting to get scheduled. I've just asked that everybody please still do social distancing, do whatever you can to be careful out there when you're meeting people. I know that I'm a hugger, and that's one thing I've really missed this year, is being able to hug everybody. And by God, when we have our next meet and greet, I intend to hug everybody anyway, and I'll just go home and boil my body or something. I don't know, but I need that contact. So we have a meet and greet planned in Los Angeles. I think it's on Wednesday, August, what day? Hang on, let me see what day in August that is. August the 25th. You can talk to Barbara Thomas about it and check the events. I will be in Los Angeles that week, and Barbara's planning a get together for all of us. And I think so far we've got about 20 people planning on going. We'd love to have more come. And I know that we're planning another one in the Houston area in the next few weeks. I don't have the date set yet, but just watch the events and watch the events in your area. If you haven't joined a group for the state that you are in, just raise your hand to any of the admins or moderators and tell them where you'd like to be placed, and they will make sure that you get there. Those individual groups that are made for the regions are designed specifically so that we can plan these face-to-face get-togethers. If you're interested in that, then reach out to a moderator.
Yeah, that's awesome that these groups are opening up. I now that you say that, I think the last one that I went to was the one in Houston after the CBS interview. Yeah. Because I know we had one here in Southwest Florida, but I think it was before that. Mm-hmm. Wow, it's been a long time. It's been a long, weird. And I was supposed to go to the spring retreat. That was the last thing that you probably did right before all this broke. I mean, I think it was
yes,
like that
2
week,
days,
wasn't it?
2 days after our spring retreat in 2020, the nation shut down. We just barely got it in, and it was a wonderful retreat. We are planning another one. Can we talk about that?
Please do. Absolutely.
Okay. So we're planning our next, we try to do like a conference every year, but we've only done 2 so far, and they've been very successful. This year, though, I think we're going to make it a little more relaxed. It's going to be more like a retreat, and it's going to be in October. It's going to be in Northern Arkansas at Petit Jean State Park at Petit Jean Mountain, one of my most favorite places in the universe. And I want to share it with all of my NPE friends. It's a beautiful place. It's a place that you're going to feel the healing there. It's the air is crisp and clear and cool, and it's just sunny enough during the days, and at night it's cold enough to build a fire in the fireplace in the cabins. They've got a lodge with rooms that are like hotel rooms. They also have cabins available. We're going to post more about that very soon. I'm sorry we haven't got the registration set up yet. I've been a little distracted with some family obligations the past few months. But I promise you, I will get with Rebecca and we'll get that up on the website so you can register for it. We're going to make it as affordable as we possibly can so that more people can attend. The venue is 90 minutes drive from Little Rock, Arkansas's airport. So if it's something you think that you could do, then start planning now for your travel arrangements. I know that there's several people who were talking about maybe trying to coordinate and rent a van together so that everyone can just ride up together if they can all show up at the airport at about the same time. But it'll be I think the third weekend in October. Check the events, that it's there on the events, and it's also in the announcements. There's a little video that I posted of a little short hike I did when I was there last October. But we're so excited about it. We're going to keep it a lot more relaxed. It's not going to be as packed with speakers as we've had in the past, because we want everyone to consider it a time to exhale. And we are going to have several activities planned. It just won't be as intense as the last couple of conferences have been. And then I believe that Rebecca is working with a couple of people to try to plan a virtual conference in the fall also. We don't have a date set on that yet, but more will come about that later.
Okay, excellent. What did you say the date was for the retreat?
It's October 23rd, I think. Let me look at my calendar.
Okay.
Friday, October 22nd through Sunday, October 24th.
Okay. Okay. I can vouch that I went to the first one in Texas, and it was a weekend that I thought I needed, and then when I was there, when I left, I realized I really needed it. It was so good to spend time with you and everyone else, and hear the speakers. But just I got to meet Paulette there. It just really was a place to connect, just like the meet and greets. But the meet and greet, you come knowing that you have to leave in an hour or two. And with the retreat, you don't have to leave. You don't have to go anywhere. And that relaxation really sets in. So I can vouch for that. I think it's an amazing thing you do. So,
if you don't mind, I'd like to share something that happened at both of the two annual retreats that we've had already.
Please do.
And also, we've done a cruise one summer before COVID hit too, and we're planning to do more of those. In fact, I think the next one we're shooting our goal for is in 2022. We'll be going to Alaska.
Okay.
But one thing that I found that was very impactful about these gatherings that are overnight like this, the first retreat we had, there were a few of our NPEs that came who were women, and they signed up their husbands to come along too. And the impression that I had, forgive me guys if my impression is wrong, but the impression that I had were that these husbands were going along with to be supportive of their wives, but maybe their heart wasn't completely into it as much as the wife may have wanted them to be, but they were being good sports and going along with it and coming to the retreat. And by the time our weekend was over, every single one of those husbands that came along came to me and thanked me and said, I did not realize how intense this is, how impactful this has been to my wife. I'm feeling a little bit of regret that I haven't been more supportive of her. But I promise you, things are changing in our home from this point forward. I didn't realize how traumatic this really has been for my wife until I listened to you and listened to a bunch of other people at this retreat talk. So when we do plan these events, we really, really, really encourage you to bring along a support person with you, your spouse, your best friend, your mom, your cousin, whoever you want to bring. We're going to have information for them too. We're going to have fun things for them to do too. We want to include everyone in these healing sessions. And it's amazing to me to see how much the extended families that are engaging in these activities will come back and say, wow, I didn't realize how much we needed this. I even had one husband come to me and say, our marriage has been in trouble. And I feel like the NPE thing was damaging it further, but I promise you that's not happening. I feel like you've saved our marriage now. And that really meant so much to me to know that we're not just making a difference in the NPE's lives and learning how to adapt to your situation, but we're also helping heal the families too. So please think about bringing someone with you.
can we stay here for a second? Can we talk about this?
Sure.
This is critical, and Jody Gerard and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. The education is so important, and one of the things my wife said to me was, I mean, she said, I empathize and sympathize with you. She said, but I don't know how to help you. Now, my wife and I have been, we have been down a long road together, and we have come to a place of honesty that a lot of people don't get to in their relationship. So we were fortunate enough to develop that skill where she could recognize and say that to me. And I think a lot of what's happening with a lot of spouses and even families, I mean, the extended family, this sends a shockwave through the entire family. And I think, if we want to pick on husbands here for a second, if a husband, if he doesn't know how to help, he's going to feel anxiety. And when people feel anxiety, they retreat into a defensive position. It's just what we do. And I can see it causing strain because they don't know how to fix it. They can't fix it. They want things to go back to normal. They're just feeling the after effects. They want their wife to just be who they were before the discovery, and they don't know how to make that happen.
And men are programmed to fix things.
Yeah.
They're programmed to.
I can't deny that. I can't deny that at all. And I think what the education does is get to help people see things in a different light, which is the conversation with Jody just went magically down a direction that we got to talk about how other, the siblings we grew up with, the vantage point they see it from, the new siblings. We talked a little bit about spouses. So it's important to bring people. It's important to share videos that are out there, and I try to do as many as I can. We're trying to educate. It's important to get people who are non-NPEs to understand what we're going through, because it is such a new phenomena and everyone's affected. And I think that's the thing that's most often overlooked, is just how much this affects everybody in the family. And as an NPE, I mean, we are all the center of our own universe. There are very few exceptions to that. And I know as an NPE, I was so overwhelmed with what was going on with me that it was many months later, if not a year later, that I was suddenly like, holy cow, I haven't bothered to ask my sister how this has affected her. Mm-hmm. She's, now she's my half sister. I mean, she's the same person she's always been, but the dynamics are different. I thought she was a whole sister, and now she's really half sister. And I didn't ask her how she felt about that. And when I asked, when we started talking about that, that changed our relationship. And I think we need people to come. We need to share this experience. We need the awareness, which is what the NPE awareness is for. So I digress. I'll step off my soapbox a little bit, but it's just so important. It's just so important that everybody's affected more than they think they are. So we got a question you typed out here. You want to take a stab at this question?
Where is it? I don't see it.
I'll read it to you.
Okay.
Yeah. So Maria asked, what was the most surprising unintended consequence of the DNA test as a whole, in your opinion?
I think the most surprising consequence was that my maternal side of my family were split on their support for me being public. I just took for granted that they would all be supportive, and I was surprised that there were some who felt like what I was doing was betraying my mother. And there were some who felt like I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have become so public or become public at all about it. It's interesting though, because I have cousins on my mother's side who were absolutely supportive and still are, and are very encouraging. And they share the NPE awareness posts that I make on Facebook. And it just really touches my heart to see how they seem to get it. They seem to sympathize and understand that this is an important issue, that family secrecy should be shattered. while there's another segment of those relatives who have completely cut me off. And that was a disappointment that I was not expecting. But I can live with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great answer. But the family split is something that's really haunting me, just from a personal standpoint. And this goes back to the education thing that we were just talking about. But
Exactly.
and I think you and I will agree on this point, that what happened in the past is really not the point. It's how things are being handled from here forward. And I know your situations with with your mother is a little different, but with everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think people, they get defensive and they want to defend their honor, or they want to defend someone else's honor, or they, and that it was never about that for me. And I know I've spoken with so many people that, and we talk about this in the group. We talk all the trainings that I've done, the speaking engagements that I've done. If your biological parents don't get together, you don't happen. So at some level, we have to be grateful that the circumstances were the way they were. And that's a fact that we cannot ignore. So from there, we can mature and understand that people are people. People make decisions. This has always been going on. DNA is just now, the science is just now catching up with it, and that they didn't have that before. People could just make specific decisions, say certain things, and go about their life, and then their secret would never get out. And people make mistakes. People make bad decisions. Things happen. None of us are immune. Lord knows I've made, I can't, more mistakes than I can count on. So, but it's from here forward. It's acknowledging
Mm-hmm.
that we have a deep scar. Half our identity is not what we thought it was, and we have to reconcile that. Even if we come back around, and most of us do, come back around to the birth certificate father that raised us, and we reconcile all that, whether you do, whether you don't.
I absolutely believe, and maybe this is because I have a spiritual base, but I absolutely believe that everything happens for a reason. Sometimes we may go through our entire life not being able to understand why something specific happened. But then there are other times in my life that I have been blessed with being able to see the end and be able to look back and realize, oh my gosh, that had to happen for the outcome to come to this today that needed to happen. But back then I couldn't understand, why was this happening to us? It was, a trying time, a very difficult time, a painful time. But then in the long run, the outcome was so beautiful, but it would have never turned out this way had not that difficult period happened. I know I'm being real general when I say that, but I've seen it happen over and over again in my life. And because of that, it just restores my faith even stronger that this devastating trauma of my NPE discovery had to happen for something beautiful to develop from it. And for me, one of the most beautiful things that developed from it is our DNA NPE Friends Fellowship community, and the group that we have, that we're seeing healing every day. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that lives have been saved because of our community. So it had to, sometimes difficult, painful things have to happen in order for more beautiful things to happen. For me, in my situation, I have a very squirrely medical history. I consider myself generally pretty healthy, but my immune system is really messed up, and I've had one problem after another over the years. And several years ago, it got to the point where they couldn't, I was constantly having to have IV antibiotics for one infection or another. And it got to where they couldn't even give me a PICC line anymore. And PICC line is a major IV line set into the arm. They couldn't do it in my hands. They couldn't do it in my arms. So they did a PICC lines. And after a while, I couldn't do the PICC lines anymore. So my doctor said, you need a port. And I was like, no, ports are for chronically ill people. I don't need a port. Yes, you need a port. And I fought him for 3 years saying, I am not going to fall into that category. There's nothing, I'm not that sick. I'm fine, until my NPE discovery. And my new sister showed me pictures of her children, and one of her children, a registered nurse, unfortunately passed away suddenly from an opportunistic infection that hit her so fast and so hard that she wasn't able to get on top of it fast enough. And it turned out that she too had a port, and she too was constantly having the same problems that I've been having, which I'd never heard of anyone doing that. So it was a surprise to me to learn that my squirrely immune system was actually something genetic that I had no control over. And it was a wake-up call for me. My new sister said, Catherine, don't poo-poo this. Go get the port and take care of yourself better. And that was my wake-up call. Had I not had my NPE discovery, what would have happened to me if I had not taken it more seriously? So yeah, there's another good thing that came out of it. It very well may have saved my life. So when you're going through your NPE discovery and you feel like, this is just devastating and it's horrible and it's awful and absolutely no good can come of this, just sit back and wait. This is just the middle of your story. Around the corner, there's going to be something good that is going to come out of it. I know, because I've seen it, not just with me, I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times in the group too. And it definitely restores my faith in the fact that sometimes bad things happen for a reason, and we just have to sit back and wait and see what the universe opens up to us as to the good things that are going to come from it.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. I want to shut it down. I want to shut it off from there. I don't want to talk after, but going back to the medical history, I found out with my biological father that I found out that he died of esophageal complications from esophageal cancer the same week that I was diagnosed with esophageal precancer.
Wow.
And so I was still diagnosed with that. So I had that, right? But then I got to see from a genetic standpoint that what it could progress to, where had I not had that information and just gotten that diagnosis, I'd been like, oh, well, but I know that genetically that my biological father died from that. And so it had a much greater impact on how I take care of myself. That's just my version of that, but it's incredibly important. The medical history is a huge aspect of that is one of the reasons that I think people need to know the truth, which is a different conversation. We probably don't want to get into tonight. And someone here in the comments may ask a question about why doctors are dismissive of how we feel. And I think, if you don't mind, I'd kind of start to hit that. People see things from their vantage point, and it's the same reason that our friends keep say things like, well, your dad's still your dad, or it doesn't change who you are, and that kind of thing, because they can't, from their vantage point, they cannot. We've all been exposed to people who have cancer. So when someone tells us they have cancer, even if we haven't had cancer, we still have an idea of what that entails, and we can tap into those emotions and sympathize. This is so new that
I have my thoughts on this.
Yeah, please. Let's hear it.
So I think that this is something we can all relate to, especially in the past couple of years. Fear comes from ignorance, and ignorance is one of the driving forces of the problems, the foundation of the problems that we see in the world, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And I think that when it comes to why do our doctors treat us with such indifference or heartlessly or thoughtlessly, it's because in all of their medical training, they never tapped into this dynamic of the NPE experience. And the reason they didn't is because it didn't exist until now. And if you look at prejudice over the years, 40, 50 years ago, people cavalierly threw around horrible, horrible words and phrases that were offensive to people who were of color. And their attitudes were ignorance. They didn't realize that what they were saying was extremely hurtful, or they didn't care because they didn't give it any thought. And they should have just taken a step back and thought about, what am I saying that's hurtful? It's taken years of evolution for our society and our culture to start realizing that those words and phrases are offensive, and not just to people of color, but to people of alternative sexual preferences or different nations, different ethnicities, different countries, different continents. So we're starting to see an awakening of more sensitivity to people who are different from us. But the NPE experience is so extremely new that that kind of training and that kind of sensitivity hasn't been taught. It's ignorance. And then when you don't understand it, you fear it, so you want to avoid it. So I think that that's what we're seeing from doctors sometimes, unfortunately, is that they blurt out things that they're just not thinking about how insensitive it sounds, or their body language is insensitive even. I mean, we are so hyper raw that even the expressions on their faces can hurt us when we start talking about this. So I think that we are the pioneers in educating the world. I think it's extremely important that we do all we can to be the teachers, so that the next generations won't have to go through the pain that we're going through. But yeah, I think that a lot of it has to do with just how much we need to assume the role of teacher to the rest of the world on this, so that they do realize and they do learn that what we're going through is painful, and it's sensitive, and it is raw, and it is confusing, and we do need the same validation. I don't want to compare an NPE experience to, say, cancer, but that was a good analogy. But when somebody says, my dad has cancer, you immediately go, oh, because like you said, there's somebody out there in their life that they know of that had cancer, and they know that it's traumatic, and they know it's painful, and they know it's devastating when you lose someone you love too soon. So they have something to relate to. They don't have anything to relate to with us. So I'm hoping that as each year goes by, we're going to see more and more sensitivity.
Yeah, I do too. And which is what we're trying to do here, right?
Yes, I think that what we as NPEs have to do for all of us who are the pioneers is, God, I hate saying we have to get stronger and tough it out, because sometimes it's just impossible to do that. But when we go into an experience where we're going to be making that announcement, if you will, about our NPE experience, whether it's to a doctor or to a family reunion or whatever, we need to just steel ourselves to the fact that we're going to get some reactions that we don't like, and just accept it before we even open our mouths. We're going to get a reaction we don't like, and it is our job to let them know, I understand that you don't understand what I'm going through, but I'm here to tell you it is one of the worst things I've ever been through, and I need you to get on board with this, especially if they're professionals.
Yeah, agreed. And we need to adopt the same ideology that we're talking about. That if people react negatively, we need to also be educated and not ignorant of the fact that they're being ignorant. And so when we start to understand that people that are being ignorant and their reactions are because of a lack of knowledge, then we start to not take them so personally. We start to understand it's not about us, it's about them. And then when we don't take it personally, we can take the emotion out of it, and then we can react a little more responsibly. And then we have the opportunity to educate, right? If we escalate into an argument, we don't get a chance to teach anybody anything.
So I go into the store and I have my little sister who's got severe cerebral palsy, and she's in a wheelchair, and she looks completely different from everybody else. And people walk by and they don't look at us or whatever. They just walk on by and they're trying to just pretend that we're just as normal as everyone else. But their 4-year-old daughter stands and stares and goes, "What's wrong with her?" Well,
Yeah.
that's how we need to look at these people who say things that are inappropriate to us and we're offended by. We have to look at them like they're a child who honestly just doesn't know any better.
Right.
And we need to talk to them sometimes on that same level and say, well, she's like this because of this. And we need to accept that they're asking the questions not because of judgment, but because of ignorance. It's purely their ignorance, and they want to learn. And when they say things that are ignorant, sometimes we just need to accept that, you know what, this is no different than a kindergartner who opens their mouth and says something that just horrifies the parents, and they want to crawl under a desk because their child asked that question or said something. We just have to treat them that way.
Right.
And accept that, you know what, treat them like a child. You don't have to be rude to them, but you can talk to them almost like you're talking to a kindergartner, explaining, well, this is what happened and it really made me sad.
Yeah. Well, in all reality, it's the same reason that people watch Jerry Springer and they spend hours watching weird videos on YouTube, and because we all do it. We're all curious about things that we don't understand, and that's human nature. And we understand that we're just as guilty in another capacity, another avenue. That people are all the same, and it really helps take the sting out of it. That's what I keep telling people. If people don't want to hear compassion. They fear that it's weakness and that they're giving something up, but it entails just understanding that people are human and they're making mistakes and they're coming from their own angle. And it ends up having a positive effect on us. It takes the sting out of what we're going through because we don't take it so personally. I can't drive that home enough. And we have to, and it's like in your situation, if that happened with your sister in a public forum and someone came up and said, "Excuse me, my daughter is 7 and can we ask," would you be offended?
Oh, we get that a lot too. No, absolutely not. We encourage it, and Lisa loves it when kids come up and ask questions.
Awesome.
And when the parents act horrified, we tell them, no, don't feel bad. We're happy that they're asking questions. This is how they learn.
Right. And they learn to have respect and not snicker behind people's back. And
right. And it's the same thing with the NPE experience. We just need to accept the fact that when people act awkward and they don't know what to say and they want to change the subject, it's okay for us to say, "I know that this made you feel a little uncomfortable, but it's really okay to talk about it with me. In fact, I like to talk about it because I think it's important that people understand where I'm coming from." And segueing from that, I'd like to add in that every family is different, but in my family, we were raised to think that mom and dad were up on this pedestal, and they never tried smoking or drinking before they were legal age. They never did anything like even petting when they went on dates. They were always, G-rated, and
right.
And we've got this image of our parents that are like that. And so when they fall off that pedestal, and then we have relatives like my cousins that are uncomfortable with this, who are very upset, saying, this is a betrayal. I come back and go, well, actually, I don't think of it that way at all. I think of it as, this makes my family more human, my parents more human. They made boner decisions just like I do. They made choices that maybe they regret later, or they made choices and they went, you know what, I thought it was going to have a different outcome than it did, but it is what it is. And it's our responsibility to love them and accept the fact that, they're just as human as I am now.
Yeah.
And I feel closer to my family because of this experience, because I feel like, well, okay, so decisions were made that maybe they regret now, but at the moment they were just being human, and that makes them more relatable to me now.
Right.
So I think it's important that we take them off that pedestal and accept that they're just more human, just like us.
Yeah. Which is ironic, right? Because you think taking them off the pedestal sounds like an insult, but it's actually a compliment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And Jody and I talked a lot about that too. Yeah, and there are people who have different circumstances. People who are listening or going to watch this, people have different circumstances, and there's a lot of emotions. There's people, and even though we're talking about the reasonable things and the logical things and the necessary things to heal, I still want to point out that your feelings and emotions are valid, and you need to process them. So if you're angry, you can't just tell yourself, "Oh well, mom made a mistake." It doesn't work that way. You have to do them simultaneously. You have to learn to balance them. You have to keep one in mind to help process the other, but you do have to work through and acknowledge, because if you don't, if you suppress it, it will come out eventually, probably in a way that you wish it hadn't. But you're absolutely right. People are people. People been, as I said 45 minutes ago, people have been doing this for thousands of years. They're just now getting caught. And I know that a lot of people in the group we've talked to that are older have acknowledged their parents thought they were going to the grave with them. I mean, their parents got to be 70, 80, 90 years old, and they thought, this is it. And then boom, out of nowhere in the last couple of years, these DNA kits come out and everyone's just being blindsided. I think it's going to change. It's going to change family dynamics across the board from here.
Yes.
Yeah. I know there's some people working on some legislation, right?
I believe so, yes, and I would love for us to be able to get more involved in that. I have an image in my mind of what I would like to see across the board, at least for the United States, if not every country. I would like to see birth certificate, the design of a birth certificate to be changed to show four parents' names, two biological parents, biological mother, biological father, legal parent. And I specifically say legal parent because as you know, there are lots of different types of families out there. There
Right.
are parents that are two women, parents that are two men, parents who are gender binary. I'm not sure. I may be using the wrong terminology, and I apologize if I am. And please feel free to educate me. But there are people out there that don't really embrace one specific gender, and that's why I'm thinking legal parent would be the appropriate terminology for our birth certificates. And that's what I would like to see. And I would also like to see all sealed records opened for adoptions and donor conceptions and surrogacies, full disclosure. And another thing that I think we need to see is, and this was appalling to me, and I didn't realize this until the NPE experience happened to me, but did you know that our birth certificates don't belong to us?
I did know
they don't belong to us. They belong to our parents. And that needs to change too. I think that birth certificates should belong to the parents until the child turns 18, and then the possession of it should go to the child. So we need to see legislation started in every single state to make that change to the ownership of the birth certificates, because I've heard so many stories about people who the biological father was totally wanting to get his name put on the birth certificate. The biological mother was into it too, but the birth certificate father said no. And if any one of the parents, whether it's a biological parent or a birth certificate parent, if any one of them says, nope, we can't change it, at least in the state of Texas, they're not going to touch it. They're not going to change it unless everyone is on board to change it. And it doesn't matter if you have DNA proof. It doesn't matter that the biological mother and the biological father are agreeing to it. If the birth certificate father says no, you can't touch it. I think that should be obliterated. I think that all that matters is me as the person who is the child. I should be able to go and say, I want my birth certificate updated accurately, and here's the proof. And it shouldn't matter if my birth certificate father or any of his existing family resist. It doesn't matter if my mother resists. It should be 100% ownership is mine. So I would like to see that kind of legislation started too. So I would encourage any of you who are wanting to become advocates of NPE rights to talk to your congressman and and I know that there are bills that are being passed in different states that are supported by LGBTQ rights groups, and somebody talked to me about it. Could be that we could partner with some of those organizations that are getting legislation through to make sure that our needs are met as well. But yeah, we need to see some big changes.
Yeah, so I didn't, when you said that we don't own our birth certificates, I didn't think that's where you were going with that. I didn't understand that as you just explained it.
Mm-hmm.
That is mind-boggling.
It belongs to our mom and our dad, the mom and dad that are on the birth certificate. It belongs to them. And
so for anyone who listening who isn't an NPE or isn't as involved in this, let's put that into some context, because when a baby's born, the mother decides who goes on the birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
So she just says, this is the way it is, and no one asks any questions, and they put it on there. And then obviously now we have a problem when we need to change it, just from an arbitrary decision that was made at birth. And there's so many factors that can come into that. I mean, I don't want to judge those factors. There's a lot of varying factors that can come into that, but we can see the problem here, that if someone can simply make a decision with something on a document that can't later be changed because someone else doesn't want it, that causes real problems. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be that way. I know that we get into, and we probably don't have time for this tonight, but there's the question of privacy. When people bring up that everyone should be DNA tested, then people bring up privacy. Now you have a database, it goes into a federal database. And so there is a flip side to that. I don't have a solution for that. And that's probably, I don't either. That's probably another long debate that I need to be more prepared for if I'm going to actually talk about it. But I do understand that is a concern, because people have advocated that all babies should be DNA tested for this reason right here. But then obviously now you're discussing a child now has had its DNA taken without its consent, and it's in a database somewhere, and that's a real concern for sure.
I think, and this is just me thinking about this right now, and I could change my mind, but I think that we should allow the status quo to continue as far as a baby is born, the parents say, yeah, put my name on the birth certificate, especially if it's in a marriage situation, because usually they don't question, legally it's whoever the husband was is considered the legal father. And if there's no dispute on that, then I don't think a DNA test is necessary. But at any point in that child's future, if a DNA test proves otherwise, and that child is of a legal age, there shouldn't be any questioning. They should be able to just take the evidence that that adult child gives and make whatever changes that the child is asking for based on the evidence presented. But I don't necessarily agree that DNA testing should become a standard requirement because of privacy. I do believe that privacy is very important, but in the cases where DNA testing is done and the adult child wants their record to be corrected, it should happen easily and with minimal cost, because we're punished enough just finding this out. We don't need to add insult to injury by having to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get it fixed.
Yeah, sure. So, well, we're at an hour, a little less than that after the technical difficulties, but.
Do we have any other questions out there?
Let me look real quick. No, but we have a lot of people who've joined us and are adding comments, and I want to thank you, all of you who are here watching. I tagged you in the group, and I tagged you on my Facebook, and it looks like we have a lot of our people who have joined us here, so I'm grateful for that. But does anyone have any other questions you want to drop in the chat real quick before we wrap this up? Okay, so while we're waiting to see if someone has another question, let's run down. You have the fall retreat planned in October, and the plan is in the works for another cruise in the summer. This one to Alaska. Right.
Right.
Was there any other events?
And then the virtual conference that that we're working on with Rebecca. Don't have a date on that yet, but we're hoping to do that maybe in the fall before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
We've got that going on. And then we have meet and greets all over the world. And we encourage you to plan one. If you don't know how to plan one, there are instructions on how to plan one. It's not as hard as you think. Don't be intimidated by it. But there are instructions in the files on how to plan a meet and greet. And I encourage you to plan some for your area. Let's get everybody back out and meeting each other again.
Yeah, definitely. I know I need to get out of the house. I feel like I'm going on vacation when I just take a shower and go out. So, okay, well, it doesn't look like anybody else has dropped any questions in here. We're getting a lot of thanks. All right, Megan Scott has hit us with a question. She wants to know that where are you and I both, where are we in our NPE journey and how are we feeling about it?
That's a good question.
Also too.
Okay, well, it's still at the forefront of my thoughts every day, but I find that I don't wake up and have it hit me hard in the face like it did for the first 2 years anyway. So that's kind of nice to be able to start my routine and not have it come slamming back into me. There was still some separation where you wake up and for just a few minutes you forget that this happened to you. And now I think that because it's starting to integrate into my dreams at night, I'm dreaming about my 2 new sisters in different ways that are, silly dreams, the way I do anyone else in my life. And so now they've kind of integrated into my life so much that it's not a shock to me anymore to go, oh my gosh, that did really happen. I will admit that in the past week or so, with Father's Day coming up, and I was thinking about my daddy, who I absolutely love very much. I did have a sense of sadness again that hit me like it did the first couple of years, but it was short-lived. It was only for a few minutes, and I felt a very strong sense that he would be so proud of me and how I'm handling it now. And I just kind of felt like I felt a hug coming from him on that. And I know that sounds corny, but it is what it is. So I feel like I'm starting to get a stronger sense of peace. And I just think that it just takes time. I mean, time heals everything. And I feel like it's been 4 years for me now. And it's getting a lot easier. And the group deserves so much credit for that. Every single day I go in and I see the raw pain of somebody new and what they're going through. And I can completely relate because I was there. And all I can think is, as time goes by, it's going to get softer and easier, and it's not going to have those rough, raw edges that cut at your heart anymore. And there's going to be some good things that are going to come out of it that you were not expecting. You just have to wait. I keep telling everyone, this is the middle of your story. None of us are at the end of our story yet. This is the middle of your story. And when it first starts, it's kind of rocky and scary and painful, but as time goes on, good things come out of it. You just have to wait for it.
Yeah, very well said.
How about you, Brad?
I agree. I agree with you. And the biggest piece of advice before I get into my story, I'll kind of move back into that, is, and it took me a long time to learn this in my life, is don't make any rash decisions when you're emotional.
Mm-hmm.
It's no bueno. I mean, if you have to protect yourself, that's a different story. I'm all about self-preservation and self-protection and self-care. And I will always, if physically or emotionally, you have to protect yourself. That's what you should do, and then figure it out. But just be careful of, blowing up a bridge when you're angry, because it's always fleeting. It will always evolve. I shouldn't say always, that's a pretty strong word, you know, there are certain circumstances. So in my case, things are good. I have some unresolved family business that needs to be taken care of, and I'm not here to call anybody out or air any of that out. That's a little more personal than I want on public Facebook page. But for me personally, I have come to grips with everything. My biological father passed away. I never got to know him. And so that'll always sting, but that can't be rectified, right? I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. My birth surrogate father has been very supportive, and we've talked through a lot of different things. He's very understanding, and even things that I've said that I've tried to go to him to make sure that when he hears things I've said, he understands that there's nothing personal behind it, that I'm processing what I'm going through, and we even talk through those things. So that's all good. The group has been the biggest catalyst for that. I'm a huge proponent. All the presentations and the videos and the things I do, I always talk about. It's a lot like AA. When you finally go walk into a room and you're in a room full of people who understand what you're going through, there's nothing like it. There's just no substitute. And when you have people who have been there before you pat you on the shoulder and say it'll be okay, and you have an ideal picture of what healing looks like in front of you, and there's no substitute. That is just huge. The one thing for me that, and I will say, in helping the other people, the work that I'm doing within the group and everything else, every time I speak helps me. And I encourage people all the time to think about getting involved in one way or the other, because there's no better way to heal than helping somebody else heal. I assure you that. The one thing that sticks, because of COVID, I got to meet my biological uncle, the only surviving sibling of my biological father, and he was amazing. And then COVID happened, and I didn't get to meet any other family members. And I even have a cousin who lives about 75 miles from me. I still haven't seen her in all this. And then my biological uncle, he wasn't well, and he passed away. And so I only got to see him once. I was hoping to take my family up there to meet him, and he unexpectedly passed away. I say unexpectedly. I don't think he was well for a while. So I didn't get to see him again because of COVID, and I haven't got to meet new family members. And they want to meet me, and so I need to resolve that aspect. But from a healing standpoint, things are good. I'm I think about 3 years into it, 2.5 years on the confirmation, about 3 years, and things are good. But it's work. I mean, I have to work at it. There are times that I slide backwards. There are times that I get upset, I get angry. The weirdest thing trigger me or set me off. And I tell people all the time, it's part of it. I mean, we're going to have good days and bad days, but the longer we get away, we move beyond it. If we're putting in the work, the farther we get away from the event, then the good days far outweigh the bad days, and that's what's important.
Right. I got to thinking about something I think is rather important that I want to share with the people who are really new in their NPE experience, and I've seen this over and over again too. Really important piece of advice I want to share. Many times when you're going through your NPE experience, especially at the very front end of it, when you're reaching out to your new biological family, especially a parent, say a father in many cases, it's really easy for you to say when you reach out to them, you know, I really want to get to know you, but I will understand if you don't want to get to know me, and I will never contact you again. Please don't ever do that. Don't ever close the door permanently. Don't ever say, if you don't reach out to me, I'll never bother you again. I'm not encouraging you to bother them, but don't make the commitment that you will never contact them again, because just because you want to be kind and polite and respectful of their privacy doesn't change the fact that somewhere down the line, you may need to reach out to them again for one reason or another. And you don't want to be in a position where you're going to be breaking a commitment that you made that, oh, you know, I told you I was never going to contact you again, but here I am. So you can close that door and say, listen, I'm going to give you some time to process this. I'm not going to be a pest about it. I'm going to give you a lot of time to think about it, but I will be here. And I look forward to the next time we can talk. And that kind of still says that you're not going to bother them, but at the same time, you're leaving that door open for yourself, because whether it's 6 months from now or a year from now or 5 years from now, you may find yourself in a position where you are going to want to reach out to them again. And you don't want to have them come back and go, you know what, you told me you weren't going to bother me about this. So don't ever make the commitment, I will never contact you again. Never burn the bridge.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's a couple of things I'd like to add to that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One is that, you learn, I was in a former life, I was in sales, and you learn that no doesn't mean no. I mean, in this context, no certainly means no in other contexts, but in this context, yeah, in this context, no doesn't mean no, it just means not right now.
Right.
And this is a shocking discovery, and I think we're emotional, and so we're reaching out and trying to connect with people, and then it scares them. It's like, anybody ever walk in a store and then the salesman starts walking toward them and they freak out? Well, that's kind of the same reaction we're getting here when we come at people who have no idea that we even exist, or they thought that they'd never hear from us. That they're going to pull back, they're going to protect themselves. And that initial contact can do that. But if we handle it, like you said, to handle it, give it time, be patient, and let it. I hear so many stories from NPEs that the reaction was negative at first, and then eventually they come back around with curiosity. Once the idea has a chance to settle, and we don't know, they might, they've got other family members involved. There's so much to think about, they have to process. Let them process it, and then take it from there. That's,
and always take the high road. Even if you're met with rejection, even if you're met with rudeness and hateful words, take the high road. And the reason I say that is because the rejection and the hateful words that you might be hearing from that side is fear driven. And eventually they're going to calm down, and they're going to get curious, and they're going to want to learn more about you. And they're going to be more inclined to reach out to you if they see how much grace you use in handling them when they weren't graceful with you. So always take the high road.
That's right. Always. With anybody. Even if it's somebody you don't like. Because they'll feel guilty. They weren't as nice as you were, and they weren't as calm as you. It always feels better. The integrity always feels better. There's just no doubt about it. It may be really hard at the moment, but you always have the stand on. So great advice.
And one more thing I want to go circle back around that you brought up earlier about anger. It is extremely important that you work through your anger. Don't suppress it. Don't push it away. Don't go, oh, everyone's always so lovey and kind and sweet in the group, and we're not allowed to be angry. Of course you're allowed to be angry. Of course you're allowed to have every feeling that you had. I talk about breaking plates. Find some safe way of venting your anger, a way that won't be permanently damaging to relationships, a way that won't be permanently damaging to your own psyche. But find outlets to work through your anger, whether it's through art or shattering plates or whatever you need to do. Go out to the gun range and tear up a target, whatever you need to do, but find ways to work through your anger, but work through it, face it, talk about it. Write letters and then put them in a drawer, and then write them again and put them in a drawer. You don't need to mail them, but you can certainly get a lot of those emotions out just through writing too.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. And I don't know if I've ever told you the story. I've talked about it on the podcast. When my first discovery, before I joined the group, it's like a 3-day period of just hell. I would just go out and work out, and I would turn up the loudest, heaviest. I'm a heavy metal fan from way back, and I don't listen to it too often. I listen to reggae. I live in Florida, so I'm on vacation, permanent vacation. But I turned on the loudest, heaviest music, and I worked out, and I worked out to exhaustion, just to burn it off, and until I could figure out a way to work through a process, of which the group helped me do. So excellent advice for sure. I love it when we get together and we can talk.
Me too.
Yeah, so I certainly appreciate you coming on here, and the amazing, the group is amazing. You know what it did for me, and I know what it's done for you, and I know what it's done for thousands of other people. So thank you for that. Whether you did it intentionally or accidentally, or you just never dreamed, doesn't matter. It's here and it helps people, and we certainly all appreciate that. And thank you for letting me be a part of the group and evolve as a healer in the group and helping people. It's helped me as much as I hope that I've helped other people. So I'm grateful for that too. And I hope to see you in the fall. I haven't worked that out yet, but
I hope so too.
yeah, definitely. So, okay. Anything you want to say before we go?
I think I've talked enough. It's great having everybody here, and
You were worried we wouldn't have enough to talk about.
Well, I want to thank everybody who participates in the group, even with just a like or a love or a care. If you don't feel comfortable talking or sharing, that's okay. You don't have to. Just knowing that you're there and knowing that you sympathize and appreciate what everyone's going through, it's just that energy is there. Your energy is there, and I appreciate every single one of you because you're all a part of my healing too.
Yeah, very well said. With that, we'll sign off. Thank you, Catherine. I certainly appreciate you, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
All right, bye-bye.